Over the years, I've had the chance to sit down and talk to a handful of TSP millionaires, and I have asked them about their strategies, how they got to seven figures, and what they wish they knew when they first started. And here's a spoiler alert: it's not really a big secret, and it's not some Wall Street hack or a magical stock picking formula. What I found out was surprisingly simple, but also powerful enough to take them to seven figures inside of TSP. And today, let me show you what they actually did and how many there are right now, and whether you even need $1 million in your TSP to retire comfortably. So let's dive in. Let me give you a quick update on some numbers first. As of June 2025, there were over 171,000 TSP owners who had at least $1 million in their accounts. That's a massive jump. Just a few months before, in March 2025, that number was at 147,000. So in just 3 months, we saw an increase of 24,000 new TSP millionaires. If you go back to the end of June 2024, the number was 140,400, and the growth is real and it is happening fast. So how are they doing it? Let's get to the good stuff. When I start asking these millionaires about their investment strategies, I was honestly expecting to hear some crazy, complicated allocation models, but here's the funny part: almost all of them had the same simple plan. They primarily invested in the CS and I funds. Now, for those of you who might be new to this, let me just break these down for you really quick. The C fund is like your anchor. It invests in stocks of the largest companies in the United States, mimicking the S&P 500. Think Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, the big boys. These are the companies that drive a lot of the growth in the US stock market. And the S fund is the opposite. It invests in the small to mid-sized US companies, and think of them as the up and comers. And they can be more volatile, but they also have huge growth potential. And the I fund is your international play. It invests in stocks of large companies or emerging markets in developed countries outside the US. It gives you some international diversity. And the reason these guys focused on these three funds is simple. They're all about growth, and they're all about being in the market and letting the money grow right along with it. And now, one of the interesting things I learned is that this strategy changes as they get closer to retirement. And they don't just stay 100% in growth funds forever or in the stock funds. As they approach that magic date, they start to reallocate their money more to the G and F funds. The G fund is the safest fund in the TSP. It invests in special US Treasury securities. The F fund is a little less conservative and invests in government and corporate bonds, which are basically loans. And it's still very low risk, but it can earn a little more than the G fund potentially. The reason they move their money here is to protect their nest egg. They have spent decades growing their money, and they do not want a market crash right before they retire to wipe out their gains. It's a classic risk management strategy. And don't get me wrong, they don't just move their entire asset to the G and F funds. They just strategically put a little bit at a time in there. So now we get to the real secrets that separate these guys from the rest of the pack. And these are the most important takeaways from all of my conversations. First, and this is probably the most humbling truth I learned, most of these millionaires had no idea what they were doing at first. They did not start out as financial wizards. They just got started, and they start with 5% or 10% of their gross income when they first started working. And they eventually worked their way up to 15%. When their salary increased, their contribution increased with it. And they were consistent, they were diligent, and they just stuck with it. And another great story I heard over and over again was that a lot of them had great bosses who told them what to do. You might know this, but TSP used to automatically put people's money only in the G fund unless they changed it. This meant that a lot of people had their money just sitting there and not growing at all. But these bosses, they knew better, and they told them, hey, put your money in the stock funds. And it was a blessing to have great bosses who told them about putting money in the CS and I funds. Now, here's a disclaimer, and this is important. What I'm about to tell you is not personalized financial advice. This is just the information I gather from these millionaires. Some of these TSP millionaires had an 80-10-10 split. So that means 80% in the C fund, 10% in the I fund, and 10% in the S fund. And some of them were even more aggressive by doing 100% C fund, and others just used a simple life cycle fund, which is an all-in-one fund that automatically reallocates your money from aggressive to conservative as you get older. And it's a great option for people who want to set it and forget it. It took them a little bit longer to become a TSP millionaire with the life cycle funds, but they still did it nonetheless. But here's the real secret. the one that ties all of this together. They kept things very simple and they did not time the market. They didn't panic when the market crashed in 2008 or 2020 or even 2022. They stayed invested. They didn't move their TSP to the G fund or the F fund and watch as everyone else's money rebounded. They understood their assignment, that crashes are a part of the game and that markets always recover. Their most powerful weapon was timing the market, not trying to time the market. Now, let's tackle the big question. Do you really need $1 million in your TSP to retire comfortably? The short answer is no. It all depends on your expenses and your income sources in retirement. But if you're not looking to retire anytime soon, with inflation adjustments, you may end up needing $1 million to cover your basic expenses in the future. So it will depend on when you're looking to retire with a TSP. But not everyone needs $1 million in their TSP to retire comfortably. It's a great number to shoot for, but it is not the magic key to a comfortable retirement for everyone. Why? Because it depends entirely on your expenses and your cash flow. Here's what I mean. You need to know what your monthly expenses will be in retirement. Are you going to be paying a mortgage? What about healthcare? And what about inflation? How much does it actually cost you to live the life you want in retirement? How long until you collect your Social Security? Because a lot of federal employees and military members decide to retire before they turn 62. And that is your baseline. And you also need to know your fixed income sources, where you have a first pension income, a Social Security pension, a military pension, or VA compensation for a disability. If you have all of these coming in, you may not even need to touch your TSP until you have to. And next, ask yourself, if your pension and Social Security cover most of your expenses, how much will you really need to pull from your TSP each year? And don't forget taxes, healthcare, and inflation. Those three can eat into your budget really quick if you're not prepared. And here's a quick example. Let's say your annual expenses in retirement are $60,000. You've got a first pension that pays you $30,000 a year in net income. That means you only need to pull $30,000 from your TSP each year to make up the difference. But what if you get a military pension for $30,000 on top of the first pension of $30,000? Then you may not even need to touch your TSP for a while, right? Now, using a 4% withdrawal rate, which is a generally accepted safe withdrawal rate, you will only need to have $750,000 in your TSP to give you $30,000 a year. And of course, if you had $1 million in your TSP, that would give you about $40,000 a year at the same withdrawal rate. And that gives you more cushion, but it may not be necessary for everyone. And here's something else I've seen. Some people do not even need to touch their TSP at all. Their pension and Social Security cover everything. So their TSP just keeps growing in the background. So without touching your TSP for the next 7.2 years, your account is going to double if TSP performs a 10% average annual return. Your TSP is going to double in 8 years if it performs a 9% average annual return. That makes sense so far, right? You can always check out the Rule of 72 on my separate video or schedule a consultation with me by visiting fivesuch.com/consultation. So TSP millionaires are not doing anything flashy at all. They're not chasing trends. They're not moving in and out of funds every other month. What they're doing is simple: contributing consistently, investing in stock index funds, increasing contributions as their salary rises, and staying the course even during market downturns. And that's it. So listen, I know it sounds almost too simple, but sometimes the boring strategies are the ones that work the best. So remember this: the secret to building wealth in the TSP is not timing the market. It's time in the market. And that's what the millionaires did differently. They trusted the process, they stay invested, and they let compounding do its job. And this has been another beast of a video, and we got a lot out of it.